Hello, everybody. Uh, just in case you're curious, I am currently live streaming, so if I say something or something happens, it's probably because of something that's going on in the live stream. Uh, uh, but we are going to be watching a video that I found kind of interesting. I wanted to find something else that was besides just new games and things like that, and I found a couple of Genshin lore videos, and I'm actually going to go put that as the next thing because that seems interesting. Some Genshin lore videos and some other things like that that I was interested in watching. So we're gonna look at how strong are the Archons, Genshin Impact lore and theory by Chill with Aster.
If you were to ask a table, you'll most
We're
likely
back.
get an answer akin to the gods, or to whatever being exists in the mysterious city above. So today, I want to pose an age old question. How strong are the Archons? Or at least the four that we know now. But before we begin, I want to announce that I'll be streaming on Twitch over at Live with Aster, and if you want to see really poorly decided gameplay, catch me at Play with Aster, linked all in the description. Anyway, let's start. I want to put the scope and the limitations of this video. I'll be breaking down the characters' notable abilities, assets, feats, and achievements that make them formidable. I'll
Okay.
also be covering everything that doesn't really fall in conventional strength, like intelligence, authority, and distinct skills. I also won't be comparing them against each other, so this video isn't meant to be how strong are the characters in relation to each other, or Zhongli versus A for example, or who is the strongest Archon, but rather just a
That's very good because if you were to try to be judging that based off of the criteria that she stated, this one right here would be the strongest because the Ermin Soul is OP.
list of their overall capacity as a character. I don't want to start any unnecessary debates to begin with.
So
I'll
reach
also be
his
adding my
hot
own
trust.
theories and speculations for these discussions, since there are a lot of gaps in the middle of all of this. So
Fair.
let's begin
That's a
with
very
what
fair
even
thing.
is an Archon. The classification of Archon is actually a more specialized category under the umbrella term Demon Gods. The term Demon Gods is derived from the Chinese, Korean, and Japanese translations of the Archon War, which means War of the Demon Gods when translated literally. Demon Gods
Okay.
as a classification could mean any god that has their name derived from the Ars Goetia, and these are the main players of the
Yep.
Archon War who were
I knew all
fighting for
this.
dominion of their respective areas. So the classification of demon gods will also encompass Marchosius, Decarabian, Andreas, Guizhang, and Havria, for example. The label Archon, on the other hand, is a designation given to the ruling god of one of the seven nations, who either won the Archon War and was designated by the original adjudicators, or received that title in succession after the passing of the original. We can also safely say that all of the seven nations must have an Archon at any given time, and that fate will almost always step up to make sure that a demon god is ruling over the nation. Even though some gods have already quote unquote left that position, the fact
That's actually a very interesting point. I'm curious where they're going with this, but it does seem to be that anytime Archon dies, a new Archon has to step up. So it does seem like fate is constantly turning to make sure that there is an Archon.
that they're still alive means that they are the ruling archon of that designated location. There's almost no known downtime between successions. A good example of this is Baal's passing, which is immediately followed by Beelzebul being present to rule in Azuma, and the Greater Lord's passing being continued on to Boor almost
Exactly.
instantaneously. As far as we are aware in the current lore, all of the seven nations have a designated Archon. But the term Archon, despite all the lore we have, is still very loose, so we'll just have to wait for more information about it in future patches. The Archon
I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of information about Archons when Fontaine drops. Simply because the Fontaine will be our first real new Archon. And what I mean by that is Nahida is technically spoilers. Nahida is technically the a daughter slash copy of Ruka Devada, and A is the twin of Mikato. I believe I said her name correctly. So both of them are kind of cheats. they either were created immediately or were already alive. I'm curious about the Archons that weren't, the ones that came after. And I feel like Fontaine with that with the fact that they are a Archon that was not alive or was not ruling as an Archon during the after the Archon War until after the previous Archon of Fontaine died. I'm curious how that came about, and I'm sure they're going to talk about it. Thus, we will get more information about the Archons in Fontaine, most likely.
Ones that I'll be discussing in this video are the four that we have in the game: Barbados, Morax, Beelzebul, and Boer. When we look at them from an umbrella perspective, the four seem to have a collective and constant set of abilities. Their longevity. The gods are known as immortals that have a longer lifespan than humans. They can't die from old age, but their body does slowly erode over time, which may affect their memories. Second is that they're all capable of elemental manipulation even without their gnosis. This is most evident with their playable character forms. Each of the demon gods have an unprecedented control over their elements, and how they channel their abilities are
Everything
unknown.
you'd
This is
expect out of
likely
a
because
god.
they're all elemental creatures in their own way, and that their humanoid vessel is simply that.
Incorrect? Isn't I a human? If I remember correctly, isn't I just a straight human? And that's why they're considered the ones that care about humans the most, or some crap like that. I might be entirely wrong, but I thought I was just straight human along with Mikoto.
that, a vessel. For example, Barbados is a wind spirit and Morax is a dragon. Third is that they're capable of domain expansion. Domain expansion is a vague term for creating a small pocket instance in which the Archon can move around in, and with how we see them utilized in game, there are different kinds. For example, Venti has created a pocket space during his story quest when claiming the soul of Stanley, while A has the plane of Euthymia as her own domain. Nahida's burst can also be considered as a literal domain expansion, but also her ability to create small pocket worlds and instances from dreams and memories. Interestingly enough, we have never seen Zhongli do this directly, but considering he did steal Ajdaha somewhere, I don't doubt he is also able to do this. That
I was going to bring that up. Zhongli, we have not seen create some sort of pocket dimension of any kind, but he did seal Ajdaha away in what kind of looks like a pocket dimension style, so I would not be surprised if it's well within his capabilities. I'd never considered calling it domain expansion, but hey, Jujutsu Kaisen, at least as far as I know, that's where that originates from. Uh, I haven't played the Venti story quest, so I didn't know about that. Nahida's, I can understand the connection between Nahida's and Ai's plane of Euthymia, though. I am curious about why they can do that, though.
and he's the Lord of Geo, and I'd be a little disappointed if he didn't. We also know that this ability may not be tied to the Gnosis, because Venti was able to execute it without his, and A was able to retain in her plane of Euthymia. And last is that each of the Archons are able to bestow entities with specific abilities, but the Archons have each been seen giving another entity an ability outside of their original capacity. Venti has given the Traveler and Devalin a portion of animal power during the Mondstadt Archon quest. Zhongli has
Okay.
bestowed Ashtaha with his sight during the 1.5 cutscene. A has given both Kunikozushi a kind of power that became the basis of whatever the Fatui allegedly unsealed after the Tatarasun incident, and Nahida has shared her abilities of consciousness hopping with the Traveler. So, now that we've got their general abilities listed, I actually want to open up the topic of the Gnosis. The Gnosis is a very powerful artifact, but its main purpose is to serve as a connection tool between the Archon and Celestia. A has purposefully lost the Gnosis before to cut her ties with Celestia, and Zhongli gave his away. Venti's stance on the matter is debatable, and there's heavy speculation that this scene was him giving it away, because he didn't really care much about it to fight for it, and he basically never asked the Traveler to get it back for him. Nahida also seems to be the only one to actually actively use the Gnosis in the Archon quest to further her goals. But to say that the Gnosis is completely useless is also not a good idea. The Gnosis seems to be the
That's actually a good point. Nahida is the only one that really utilizes the Gnosis. I never remembered that, but if that is true about that she uh gave it away way earlier, which I think she did. It's hard for me to remember what happened in Inazuma in the very beginning of it and everything there because that was around the time where I took a break from Genshin, was like dead in the middle of Inazuma. Although Inazuma is now my favorite portion of the story. Uh, her trying to cut ties with Celestia, I could see I doing that very easily. Zhongli, we already know what happened with him, and will stand by the statement that Venti lost that fight on purpose. There was no way if Venti actually wanted to fight Signora, she would be in the ocean outside of Mondstadt in seconds.
The catalyst that allows the demon god to unlock divine powers that extend beyond their elemental capabilities. For Zhongli, it was the creation of Mora, and for Nahida, it was the creation and maintenance of the Akasha terminal. Furthermore, Nahida
Which she
needed
got rid
two
of.
gnosis in order to access the Irminsul of the past. So, a gnosis is still a very, very powerful artifact, but its powers are more divine rather than elemental. So now we go over to the
There we go.
individual powers, skills, and feats of the Archons and really give respect to just how strong the Archons are. Barbados is a conversation that is genuinely mesmerizing because the more we know about Venti, the more we realize we know absolutely nothing at all. Barbados is the kind of character that downplays his strengths and intelligence, referring to himself as the potentially weakest Archon out of the seven, when in reality, a small percent of a really big number is still a really big number. So let's begin with Pre-Senora. Barbados' main feats is that he had the power to terraform and change the overall climates of Mondstadt in the past. Barbados was responsible for terraforming Pylos Peak and the Golden Apple Archipelago, as well as creating the famous plains and meadows of Mondstadt. Barbados also fought alongside the Valen 500.
He Barbados reshaped the landscape, and then you reshaped the landscape again with Dragonspine. Barbados is a very strong Archon.
Years ago and was allegedly summoned to Conria to assist with the main city.
He never made it there,
Barbados is
though.
also capable of exorcism, or at least in the manga, the line Vade Retro Draco is said to drive Ursa the Drake away. The line Vade Retro Draco could be a reference to Vade Retro Satana, a medieval Western Christian formula for exorcism that means go back Satan. This is possible because the manga also shows another instance of exorcism that uses the same motif of banishing rituals. Barbados also has the
I've never read the manga, so that's really interesting to know. Huh. That makes sense because of the most recent Lantern Rite Festival. Talking, Venti helped, at one point, his music helped cleanse Zhao.
power of illusions, as we see him allegedly repair the lyre. As for his overall knowledge and authority, Barbados is referred to as an absentee god because of his constant disappearances. We know that in the manga, he's been sleeping and only wakes up when certain important events are about to happen. There are three instances where Barbados was awakened because of important events: Vanessa's trial, the Cataclysm 500 years ago which started the battle with Durin, and the Valens incident as Storm Terror. It's possible that Barbados' slumbers are purposeful, perhaps as a way of maintaining his body without eroding and only waking up when Mondstadt needs him the most. Which is why the fact that he is even awake is actually really ominous considering the threat should be over. He has alleged knowledge over
Oh.
all songs that have existed, and he has knowledge of other worlds. Barbados also has the strongest connection with the goddess of time, Istaroth, considering they both co-ruled Mondstadt together at one point, and that the wind and time are closely knitted together. Barbados
I'm sorry, what?
alleged knowledge over all songs that have existed, and he has knowledge of other worlds. Barbados also has the strongest connection with the goddess of time, Istaroth, considering they both co-ruled Mondstadt together at one
I didn't know Istaroth ruled Mondstadt. The fuck?
point, and that the wind and time are closely knitted together. Barbados also used to be a thread of 1,000 winds, which is a moniker used to refer to the goddess of time. Overall, Barbados' strength and intelligence remains to be a mystery even to this day. Considering how little Venti seems to want to show his power, it's almost impossible to really pinpoint how strong Barbados is.
Yeah, Venti's very mysterious, and I've said this before. I am almost positive we're gonna get a Mondstadt chapter 2, basically. Simply because, like, we're still missing half of Mondstadt's crew that are all off in Shnezhnaya currently. And Venti is still one of the most mysterious Archons.
The next one is Morax.
We know
Unlike
a lot about
Barbatos,
you.
Morax has a vast history of dominion and was a very active participant in the Archon War. Morax was responsible for the deaths and sealings of multiple gods during those many centuries, and he was renowned
I'm sorry. He put so many gods in the dirt in the Archon War, and all I can imagine is him just standing on top of a stone pillar, just yelling, "I will have order! I will have order! I will have order!" Like his freaking ultimate every time.
as a powerhouse even amongst his fellow gods. The giant spears from the sky that allegedly terraformed the islands of Guyunstone Forest are a testimony to Morax's power. Furthermore, unlike the other three Archons, Morax is the only one we know of that gained the immense favor of other participants of the Archon War to fight by his side, which is essentially the Gueli Assembly. Morax is also capable of sealing creatures within the earth, as such with the case of Vasail and Ajdaha. Post-Archon War, Morax is able to create the currency Mora, which requires the power of the
I need to learn more about the Goili, however you say it, assembly. I don't really know too much about that.
Archon allegedly. But what's actually fascinating about Morax's lore is that despite being an absolute powerhouse in the past, Morax doesn't have that many defining abilities outside of his sheer brute force. He doesn't have that many abilities that really tie him into the divine aspect of Geo, which is strange. Morax's intelligence and demeanor that translated into Zhongli was a byproduct of many centuries, and it was actually Guizhong that was known for her tactical strategies and intelligence, with Morax almost being like an executioner instead. But it was such a fascinating dichotomy between Morax and Zhongli that I really wanted to share. However, if I wanted to theorize on an ability that Morax has, it's stone seeing. Stone seeing is the ability that Kunjun showed in Zhongli's second story quest, in which different auras are able to store memories or witness them. While Zhongli has
Yeah,
never explicitly shown that he has this kind of power, it would tie in very well with his philosophy of witnesses and recording information. I
it
don't doubt
would.
that Morax also has the ability, considering when Kunjun stated it, he said that it was a rare ability and even explained how to do it to the Traveler. Next, we move on to
Yeah,
Beelzebul.
that's
For the
the part where
purposes
I'm
of
like,
this
he probably
video,
has it.
I'll be considering the Raiden Shogun's abilities to also translate to Beelzebul's abilities. Beelzebul is a very active participant of the Archon War.
Before we continue into Beelzebub, I just want to talk about what she just said there. Considering the puppet, the Raiden Shogun puppet's abilities as a part of I or Beelzebub's abilities makes a lot of sense simply because the puppet was designed, as far as I understand, designed at I's peak, and it doesn't have, as far as I understand at least, it doesn't have any abilities that I didn't have at the time. So I can only presume that that it is I at max potential or close to it.
And her many skills with the sword and the polearm are a testimony to those centuries of battle. Beelzebul has advanced knowledge of sword techniques, such as the Muso no
Yes, she
Hitotachi.
does.
Beelzebul also has the ability to infuse her sword and weapons with divine and elemental energy, a feat she referred to in her line regarding Kaiden or Kaiden Menkyo. The Muso Jin Gorge and the death of Orobashi is one of the most distinguished moments of Beelzebul's power. With the Muso no Hitotachi, she cleaved the entirety of the gorge. Another fascinating skill set
Yeah,
that Beelzebul has is that she has extensive knowledge of Conrian techniques, which is ironic considering where her sister died. It is confirmed through the Wanderer's character stories that puppet making techniques take root in Conrian techniques. Yaimiko further supports this by saying that the techniques A used were lost to time, and only A, as a god, is privy to that kind of information. Beelzebul has continuously made prototypes even before
that's really interesting. Puppet making abilities are linked to Conria. She has ancient information about Conria, but we also know Sandrone, I believe is her name. The Fatui member is the one that makes the puppets for the Fatui. Interesting. Wonder where she got that technique from.
Kunikuzuchi's creation, and finally perfected that art with the Raiden Shogun. It's unknown if this art is the art of Kemiya, and we really don't have anything conclusive either. Booer, in my opinion, is the god with the most distinct ability set compared to the other three. I'll be considering the
Yes.
Greater Lord and the Lesser Lord as two different entities. And for now, we're only focusing on Nahida because there's no such thing as a Greater Lord, right? Booer has the ability to access from the Ermin Cell, a feat that is currently distinct to only her considering the element of Dendro is closely tied to the Tree of Knowledge. Therefore, Boer has access to all forms of knowledge and Tevat by extension, and could theoretically manipulate and store those pieces of information individually. Boer also has the ability to dreamwalk and form dreams, which she uses to communicate to others or to keep herself company. This was a technique she used in the past when she was trapped by the sages. Additionally, Boer's power connects with the mirage making and sensory manipulation. The Dendro power from the Golden Apple
She's so
Archipelago, which
OP.
manifested Kazuha, Sinyan, Fischl, and Mona's inner dreams and thoughts, were from her. Additionally, she is able to make a dream feel vivid and lucid, almost to the point of reality. Another ability she
She's
has is
so
consciousness
OP.
hijacking, an ability we see in the Archon quest get continuously utilized. She is also capable of surveillance, as she states that her favorite hobby is watching The Traveler. However, I would argue that Boer's physical power and battle experience is horribly lacking compared to the three Archons. She didn't inherit the Greater Lord's memories, which means
Yes, that's all true. But she's so OP. She has so many powers and so many abilities. Give her a couple hundred years and she'll be as strong as I or Zhongli and more terrifying. It's Batman with superpowers.
that she lacks information about the Archon War besides just general information from the Cell, and she was effectively put into stasis for 500 years. But in all honesty, with how powerful Boer's mental manipulation is, I can definitely see this kind of power get put into further play in the future. But that's it for me today. This was just a very fun thought experiment because I really wanted to respect the Archon's powers because I appreciate when stories flesh out their godlike characters. The more I read into the lore, the more I respect the separation of a god versus a regular human being. Especially in Genshin, where regular humans have the abilities to control the elements and stuff. It really makes you see how special the Archons are, even if their gameplay doesn't completely show it. But anyway,
That is a very fair statement. I really like how they formatted their video, and I really like the mix of actual information with their own theories and their own thoughts. I really like how this person sets up the video. We are gonna subscribe to them and like the video. If you all enjoyed the video and the reaction, please subscribe for more and hit the thumbs up. It does help me out. Well, it helps me out to know whether you like the reactions at all. And don't forget, do live stream me doing reactions, and I live stream me playing both Genshin Impact and a crap ton of other games. On all honesty, so if you ever want to catch me live, there you go. Link will be in the description. Bye.